You are now listening to Out of the Blank.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. I'm here with Zack Bryers.
That's it.
So, Zack, tell me a little bit about where you're from.
So I'm from Canberra, Australia, originally from New Zealand, and moved over here when I was in primary school. And I've been here, except for some travels, for a while now, a bit too long.
Please inform me a little bit about Australia, because everything I've been told about Australia is that don't go over there because everything will kill you.
That's all true, if you go to the country, but, growing up in the cities and stuff, it's just like a usual big city. You got the poor areas, you got the rich areas, and you just got some spiders and some snakes every now and then, but that's about it. The country's what'll do you in.
Do you think, all right, so what type of things in the country will do you in?
Well, so I was in the army for a while, and you're living in the bush for 9 months of the year, and you get a lot of spiders, a lot of leeches, snakes in your sleeping bags and stuff like that.
Snakes
Yeah,
in your sleeping bag?
Yeah, man. Yeah, if you leave them out, they'll come crawling there. They're trying to find something warm, and it's
Wait, are rockfish that big of a problem down there? Because I heard if you get like scratched or hurt by one of those things, you're in a tremendous amount of pain to the point of where it feels like you're giving birth.
I mean, from what I understand, they're mostly like under the piers and stuff like that. And I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff underneath the piers. So as long as you don't swim around there, you're pretty good. It's I surf. I've never had many issues with animals except for some sharks and stuff like that. But yeah, it depends where you go. It's a big country, and if you go swimming in like the northern sections of Australia, you've got crocs, box jellyfish, sharks are everywhere, but then you've got sharks as well, and it's you get used to it. It's all perspective.
I mean, with all this, like they go on land too. So like even knowing that something that's going to cause this much pain to you, apparently if you get cut by one of them, like wherever it cut you, like it feels like you're giving birth from that for like the next 48 hours. Like you're just experiencing pulsating like pain. I'm like, how do you hear that and decide you still want to live in Australia? So there's obviously got to be some beautiful things to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some good things that, like, a lot of the bad stuff is up in the northern parts. I lived up there for 5 years, and you go swimming, and they've got the jellyfish nets and stuff like that, and you'll see a couple crocs, but you don't see many rockfish. They're kind of they keep to themselves. They're in the little sheltered areas. You got to go looking if you want to find one.
Do you find that there's a lot of kangaroos out there too? Like I heard that there was
Oh, dude, there's
kangaroo
so many.
crossing signs.
There's so many. It's I was telling people when I was in New York that you know I personally hate kangaroos. That's just my personal opinion, but I hate them.
Because they're
Um,
assholes.
they are. They are. So I only found out a couple of years ago. Like obviously I've been around kangaroos for a while, but I only found out that if a dog's chasing them, they'll run into a water source and just hold them down and drown them. And to me, that is the spookiest, creepiest thing I've ever heard an animal do.
They're
And
savages, dude. Not a lot of
savage.
people understand that. Everybody looks at Kangaroo Jack, dude. I watched that movie
Yeah,
recently after watching it from when I was a little kid. My perspective on kangaroos changed so bad, yo. They are assholes, man. He
they
took that
are. They
dude's
are.
jacket and would not give it back to him. He was going around the thing, making him get in all this trouble and shit.
Yeah, and that story is pretty much a true story. I mean, there's some differences with the jackets and stuff, but they're pretty much like that. Like I used to live just kind of outside the city, and I remember I was outside once, and they had this big red kangaroo just jumped in front of my door, so I couldn't get back in the house, and it's probably like 6 feet.
They'll
And
fight you too.
yeah. So I was like beeping my horn. I was sitting in my car beeping my horn. It didn't leave for 2 hours. It just stared at me, and then just hopped on, just like an asshole.
There's a video like that was posted like a couple of years ago. Some dude was talking about he boxed a kangaroo, and it's him fighting this kangaroo. Like this kangaroo's beating the
Yeah,
living hell out of his dog. Like what they
yeah,
do is
yeah,
if an animal's smaller than them or like really, really big, they'll use their feet. Like they'll kind of lean back on their tail and kind of like hit you with their feet.
yeah. He
And
got you.
yeah, well, this kangaroo was just stomping this dude's dog when he's taking his dog for a walk, and the dude just runs up like, "You ain't fucking hitting my dog." Comes up and socks the kangaroo in the mouth. The kangaroo just squares up, fist first, and just starts going like a boxing match towards this dude. I'm
Yeah.
like, holy shit! Like, you hear that, and like, you can get I don't know if are wallabies different than kangaroos, or are they just a baby form of a kangaroo?
They're kangaroos. They're just like a smaller species.
You can
So
get
they don't get
those.
as big.
You can get those as emotional support pets.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're the nicer version of kangaroos.
Like the cousin that everyone looks up
Yeah,
to.
they're the nice cousin that everyone's family likes, and they're the golden child. Kangaroos are just like the crazy uncle at a barbecue. You
Why
know,
do why do kangaroos think that they're so like awesome, even though that they're not? Like, why do the kangaroos have like this
dude,
such like confidence that like I'm gonna fuck anything up, even though they have literally barely any claws. They barely only thing they have is really powerful kicking power.
they're. I mean, there's just so many of them. Like the house I used to live at, they have kangaroo culls in Australia, and it's a controversial topic, but you know you hit so many of them on the road, they'll just jump out in front of you. I've hit a few, and people die from the kangaroos that are they eat the grass on the roadside and then they just jump across, and they'll they'll destroy your car. They're big animals, and there's just so many of them. But when I was down with the army down in the south of Australia, they have a thing called onion grass, which is like it's like heroin for kangaroos.
Oh,
They're
they get
just
high
off
off
their
of it.
head. Yeah, yeah, and you can tell it's like watching someone on heroin just go about their day.
You-
So we were driving this tank, and I was driving it. It was probably like 100 miles an hour. We were flying, and I look across, and there's this kangaroo just keeping up with us, just bounding along, and all of a sudden it just turns straight into the tank. Boom, messed it up. It was on the roadside, just convulsing and stuff, and 2 minutes go by, gets up and hops off like nothing ever happened.
Dude, okay, so you just explained Kangaroo Jack to me because they were eating that grass all the time when they
Yeah,
were out there, and
yeah,
I guess they were tripping their balls off.
yep, yep. And there's because there's so many, and then they're all off their heads. It's crazy, man. People think they're. I mean, I might be biased, but people go, oh, they look so friendly. They look friendly. They're always at the zoos, and you can pet them and stuff. But when you're on a highway and they jump out, they're gonna mess your car up.
I think a lot of the times people look at like all the things in Australia, at all the things that kill you, but a lot of the animals that are over there do not belong over there. Like they weren't meant to be there. Like you live in Queensland, right?
I live in Canberra. It's south of Queensland. Yeah.
Well, in Queensland, Australia, like the pet, you know that rabbits are illegal there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know why that is?
Because they breed so much and they just infest everything and eat all the
Yeah,
grass.
there are over 200 million rabbits that inhabit that place. It's only 2.5 million square miles of Australia, and there's 200 million rabbits.
It's crazy. And you're right. Like, you've got all the cane toads and bullfrogs and stuff like that were foreign, and now they've just bred and they're everywhere, especially in Queensland. I spent a lot of time up in Queensland, and they're everywhere, man. And they're just,
Dude, there used to be three
wreck the
times
environment.
that. So now
Yeah.
there's only 200 million rabbits. There used to be three times that before. And you know how that even got set up in
Well,
Australia in the late 18th century?
that due to when they were poisoning.
Yeah, they did a bunch of poisonings to kill off all these
Yeah.
rabbits. People are like, "You're
Would
killing
have shut
rabbits,"
down.
because they're breeding like fucking rabbits. You remember that saying where they breed?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's 50 of them now. That one bred 50, and next thing you know, we have rabbits all over the population. But they got there in the first place from freaking the European settlers, dude. I learned
Yeah.
about this in history class. They were like, it was like my teacher was like, they brought 11 ships carrying people, convicts, all these types of things over with food, and they brought rabbits for food in like
And like
17.
3 rabbits.
Yeah, and then next thing you know, in the 1840s, like rabbits, everybody had them. Everybody could hear like just people get like there were reports of people stealing rabbits, farmers doing this type of things with rabbits.
Yeah,
Next thing you know, there's a giant problem. Like they're like, we have too many fucking rabbits now, and they're
yeah.
like,
It's like it was like a plague.
yeah, well, they tried to hunt them too, and they're like, you kill one, 12 of them are already replacing it.
Yeah. Well, it's this debate I had. Like, all the foreign species aren't really the dangerous ones and stuff like that. But I don't know, man. The U.S. You got grizzlies, man. Grizzlies scare the heck out of me.
Dude, grizzlies leave you alone as long as you don't get near it when it's like, I guess, near its cubs, like a mother
Yeah,
bear
yeah,
is that's aggressive as hell. It's not really that big of a problem, especially in the area I'm from. I don't see that. I have to go out into the mountains or something. But like,
yeah.
dude, I just watched. Do you ever follow this page on Instagram? I heard it from Joe Rogan. It's called "Human is Metal," or "Nature is Metal."
Nah.
Dude, Nature is Metal will humble you to hell, man. They had
Yeah.
two giant. Dude, look it up on Instagram right now and watch it. It's nothing but pure, like you have to click view content because it's so graphic. But I just watched one recently. It was two giant ass grizzly bears walking up to each other and they're just growling at each other like dogs do, like when they start showing their teeth.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, one gets behind a tree, the other one gets on the other side of the tree. Like if you're going to reach your arms around it and grab somebody, they both stand up and just go wham, wham, and just start tackling each other. And they start rolling. And I mean, it looks like if that it'll humble you, like the Revenant, like when that dude Leo got picked up by that bear, got thrown around, you're like, all right, it's a movie. If you watch these
Yeah.
bears fight each other, they're biting each other's jaw, they're like ripping each other's like skin, they're beating the shit out of each other, and it's like a Brazilian
Dang.
jiu-jitsu map, dude. They're just rolling on top of each other, and you're like, yo, if I was in that bear's position fighting that other bear, I'd be dead. I wouldn't even last a minute. There wouldn't be a punch to the face. It would be gone. People always complain like sharks are such true killers. I'm like, no, I'd be scared of getting fucked up by a grizzly bear.
Yeah. Because of Joe Rogan, I got into a lot of like grizzly stories and stuff like that. And I came across this YouTuber. I think his title's like hunting stories, and he talks about they got this grizzly that was chasing a moose, and it was coming up to where they were, and they were like, all right, we know this grizzly's coming. It's a big grizzly. We're gonna go hide, and we're gonna have to shoot it. And so they're waiting in the bush, and grizzly comes, hunter shoots it, gets it, and it goes down the brush. And the guy goes, all right, don't say a word for 30 minutes. Don't move, don't make a sound. And then about 20 minutes go by, and one of the guys makes a noise, and all they hear is this just gurgling sound. So they wait another hour or so, and they go back, and the grizzly has like lost half its head, but it's dragged itself to where they were, where it heard the noise coming from, and kind of turned itself, got its head under its legs, trying to get back to the person that shot it. And he's saying like grizzlies are the only animal I've seen that just have rage. Like if they get shot by you, they're gonna come get you, no matter how hurt they are. And to me, man, that is terrifying.
Well, what's the first thing you think of when you want to relate any type of thing to a bear? You say it's like a tank. It's a
Yeah,
monster. It's
yeah,
literally like they eat so much. The fact, have you seen those videos of the bears that stand up on their hind legs and just walk around like people?
yeah,
A lot of
yeah.
people are mistaking them for Bigfoot because like there's just this bear that's like out in the distance, like standing up on its hind legs, looks like a giant ass Bigfoot. Dude,
There was one on Joe Rogan where the guy he took a picture and he had his pistol aimed at this bear, at
yeah.
this sow grizzly off in the distance, just standing up. Man, that just looked
Did you hear the
intense,
story
man.
behind that?
I did. I pretty much just YouTubed Joe Rogan grizzly stories
bullets
and
didn't
looked
fit.
all them up.
The bullets didn't fit in that gun, dude. So if he would have fired that
Oh,
one
what?
bullet he had, you know how if you look at the video very closely, Joe Rogan talks about it. It looks like it's out of ammo because it's like cocked back weird. The bullets did not fit in the magazine to go into his gun. So what he did was he loaded it in through the top. So once he fired that one bullet, that definitely
So
would not have taken
that's
down the
all he had.
grizzly. That was it.
Yeah, yeah.
So he would have to wait till that grizzly's if he got that one shot into the grizzly's head, he would have to wait for that grizzly to die after that shot, which might be 20, 30 minutes later because they're so big and powerful.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing would just beat the shit out of them. Like he talks about like with those trekking poles, using the snow, like when they're hiking
Yeah.
the mountains and stuff, the dude freaking jumped down and landed on the grizzly's back, throwing those things inside of the grizzly, like stabbing it with those trekking poles. Like they have some
Man.
insane ass stories. Grizzlies are like unpredictable killers, dude. That
Yeah,
hyenas
yeah.
and coyotes are something like I realized that they can kill the shit out of you.
Yeah, yeah. Especially like have you seen the thing on YouTube, the guy who got attacked twice in one day by a bear?
Yeah, dude, just like fucking at that point you just
Dude.
want to go home.
Yeah. And then he took a picture, left a note for everyone, just drove himself to the hospital, man. That was insane to me. And then just back out, once he got healed up.
Dude, did you see the guy that freaking took the video after he got attacked by a bear?
Yeah, in his truck.
No, he was forgot he was like camping or something. A bear came up to him and just like I guess like wounded him and then left him there, like which just wanted him to get away. Probably got close to like the bear's
Yeah.
cubs or something. But he's taking a video. He's like, my face is good, my legs are good, my heart's good, my chest's good, no internal bleeding. He's like giving himself a self-analysis, but he's got a giant, what looks like a bear just took its claw and slashed the whole right side of his head. He had to get his whole right side of his head 36 stitches. Half of his hairline, his ear was like partly taken off. He had a giant claw mark from the top of his head, dude, just ripping into his scalp. And he was like,
Dude, that is the most hardcore dude ever.
oh, imagine being attacked and then just taking a video like, yeah, pretty
Yeah,
fucked up
just
right now.
Snapchat.
But yeah. Yo, follow me on that Twitter.
Snapchat lifer.
Follow me on that Twitter, attacked by bear.
Hashtag YOLO.
Dude, I'm telling you, when you live in Australia, you got to have that hashtag YOLO mentality, man. Now, are hyenas out there too?
Nah, man. So we got, it's pretty much kangaroos and crocs and then sharks. They're the big ones that scare me. And I'm definitely terrified of spiders and snakes, but I can function with my day. But I've had a few encounters with sharks and stuff, which sucks because I really love Shark Week. But I love surfing as well, so they kind of don't mix. Shark attack videos, just I don't know. I get into a weird addiction with that, where you just go down the rabbit hole, and then you're like, oh, I'm going surfing in 3 days. That's awesome. That was a great decision.
What would you say? Like, I mean, would you be scared more of a shark or a grizzly bear?
Dude, I reckon a grizzly bear, man.
Yeah, I listened to my dad and my uncle argue about this at a bonfire when I was like 14 years old. And my dad was like, you think a freaking bear is better than a shark? And like, they're just going back and forth. And he's like, I'm going to take your 60-year-old ass up to Yellowstone with a freaking thing of meat around your neck. And you're just going to walk. And then he was like, that means I'm going to drop your ass off in the middle of the ocean with a thing of T-bones around your neck and see if a shark comes after you. I'm like, I don't know which I'd rather die by now, because I've seen a bear fuck something up that is another bear and that get insane. I don't know if a shark just biting me and taking me down or just doing it underwater where I can't see it. I don't know. I like the whole aspect of being able to fight for my life, but you're not even fighting a grizzly bear if you're encounter with one. At that point, you're just like, it's over.
I mean, I think at least a shark, if it's going to be a quick thing. But like everything I've heard about grizzlies, it's like that guy who got attacked twice. It just disemboweling and just biting and just smashing you, like. And then the guy gets up and tries to walk back to his truck and runs into the same thing again. It happens again. I don't know if that happens too many times with sharks.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna like be swimming back to your boat. I think at that point you're probably dead already. Like I'm pretty sure the shark's not leaving you. The weird part about a bear is a bear will leave you if you decide like if it decides like, oh shit, like I don't need it. It's not a danger anymore. I've incapacitated it. I'm just gonna leave it here. Come back, get it for food if I need to later. But like most of the time,
he's not a threat.
yeah, most of the time a bear's just defending because you're in its area where it feels like you're going to be a problem to its children.
And I guess that's the thing is, where sharks are just seeing what you are, and like a test bite a lot of the time. So at least then that's quicker.
Well, they say
It's a
that
quicker encounter.
they say they mistake you for seals.
Yeah.
Because of
And
the way, like, if you look at, like, under a surfboard and you're coming up, if you were a shark, like, your arms and the way your legs are kind of look like a seal a little bit. Like, your
yeah,
feet
yeah.
are in the back usually, and you're paddling out, so your arms are a little kind of spread wide like a fish. So it's coming up from under you. It just sees that, and it's like, oh, shit, that's a seal. And then it bites you. It's like, oh, shit, that's not a seal at all, and it tastes disgusting.
Yeah, yeah. And I've got this leg in my mouth now. So.
Yeah. I got this. It's like when you get something stuck in your teeth, like a piece of corn. That's a leg for a shark.
Yeah, yeah. I had this debate the other day too with some guys, and yeah, it's a hard decision, man. But like I've seen sharks. Me and my daughter got circled by a great white probably a year ago, and when we were out surfing. And I mean, it's scary in hindsight, but like a lot of the time you don't see them, which I guess is the same with grizzlies. But I guess we were 5 meters from the beach, so we could swim in slowly compared to a shark. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a sense of control.
Do you find that like you live in there and then you come here, like to America, like come to New York or something? Do you find like you're more adapted, like you're more like you're stronger than the people here? Because a lot of people don't even experience what you experience.
I mean, I guess that's perspective, man. Like I was when I was in New York, I was in South Bronx, up on 142nd, and it's a different kind of toughness. Or same with like Baltimore, where I was for a little bit. It's a different kind of toughness. I'd say the country, in the bush and the country in Australia, you've definitely got those harder kind of grizzled guys. But I mean, I think it's getting to the point where every country's just, a matter of environment. You grow up in the city, except for not having hot dogs at the 7-Elevens, is kind of the same as the cities in the US.
Yeah. Well, we totally like went into this giant bear and shark tangent. What about yeah? What not in Australia can kill you, but no. What do you do professionally, man?
Yeah, so right now I run my own business doing business strategy and pretty much like growth strategies for small business. And I'm also a professional speaker, do motivation and speak to colleges and schools and stuff like that.
Do you
And
motivate
pretty
people
much
to move out of Australia?
I motivate people to do what they want. If it's move out of Australia, go do your thing, buddy. Like a big thing that I found, particularly growing up, is I never really traveled. Like I went back to New Zealand, back home, but I'm not from the touristy areas. But a lot of the kids you see that are at risk or doing those antisocial things, criminal behavior. I think a lot of problems could be solved by that traveling and seeing places like New York where it's the same issues. There's just a different context to it. The kids I worked with in New York, Baltimore, Chicago, all had the same issues as kids who I worked with here. And it was all a mindset thing. It was all the limitations they place on themselves. So it's not really subject to the environment. It's subject to the internal dialogue. And that's one of the things one of the issues you got to deal with is you feel overwhelmed in your own life, and breaking out of that barrier you put on yourself is critical. And to me, travel is a big thing to that.
Do you think a lot of people just look at like they just feel like they can't travel anywhere because they just don't have the time or the money to do it?
Well, I think it's the you get life is hard, man. Life is hard. You get caught in a rut. You focus on your primary needs, whereas when for me, I always get in a bad spot when I don't have a goal, when I don't have an incentive to do something, and doing that incentive helps to drive my behavior. So if I want to go travel somewhere, then I'm more inclined to save better than if I'm just trying to pay off my mortgage. And there's that big incentive to do with that. And making that decision is very hard for someone who will need to address behaviors. And that's why starting a business is very hard, is because you really have to address all your faults. So I think, to me, I never wanted to be someone who traveled 2 weeks a year, worked a 9 to 5 job, and just did that every year. I wanted to go live in places and go work in places, and you know bring my kids up in different countries and show them the life that I wish I'd had. I wish I'd traveled and seen all these cultures before I had kids. But it is what it is. So for me, that's a big thing. Is what's the goal? The goal could be travel, or the goal could be starting a business, or doing a triathlon, or anything like that. And once you set that goal, then you have a reason to change your behavior. So that's a lot of the things I talk about, is that we're very afraid to set goals, particularly in this day and age, because it appears so out of reach.
Well,
And
a lot of people think their goals are stupid. A lot of people are pushed down. I kind of fall on the
yeah,
line that the world is losing its creativity just because of the way society likes to play things. I mean, a lot of what's seen today, people are like, "Oh, I don't think there's going to be anything new I could create or benefit to the world." But I'm like, you won't know until you try. The
yeah,
person that
exactly.
first climbed Mount Everest never thought he could, like, there'd be anybody that could do that until he did it. You got to be that innovator. You got to be that spark that drives it.
Yeah, and it's all relative. You know, I always say to people, you got to set a goal that's really hard. And it doesn't have to be hard to everyone else. It just has to be hard to you. Like, on my website, I've put up my results for my first Canberra triathlon, and they were terrible. Like, I came last, and I was in the over 100 kilo or over 225 pound division of the triathlon, and I came last. But like, I put that up because that's my goal wasn't to come first. My goal was just to finish it. And particularly when you set goals, you forget the reason you're setting them. And same with the creativity. Like, I'm trying to start a YouTube channel, which it's one of those things where you never feel self-conscious about your face until you want to start a YouTube channel, and then you got to edit that video going, God damn, I can't change this. I need to edit a bag over that.
I see. That's why I don't edit my podcast, because you're missing the true basis of conversations, dude.
Yeah, yeah,
You can't, if you start editing, you start messing with things, trying to suggest what people are going to want to listen to, start focusing on that, you lose the true aspect of what you wanted to start in the first place. Then it becomes reliant, like you need to keep up that pace. You need to keep up that standard. You need to keep trying to please everyone. And then when someone gives you a comment, you have to try and direct yourself to fix that. And then it's like, you do it, and whoever's going to
yeah.
listen to it is going to listen to it. If they decide to run
You
with it,
set the
then there you
standard
go.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the weird thing you said was that you set goals that are really, like, hard to get, but like a lot of people set goals that are obtainable. You don't think people should set goals that are obtainable?
I mean, if you could do it, what did you grow from it? You know, the
Oh, yeah, like setting something that you don't think you would ever be able to do, and then achieving it would give you more of a drive to keep pursuing something.
well, for me, so I started playing gridiron, or American football. I got to call it gridiron in Australia. Um, when I left the army, because I'd come back from Afghanistan, I was diagnosed with PTSD. I was in a bad spot, and I just said, you know what? I've never played gridiron. I've always watched the NFL, and I'm going to try and make the Australian team. I didn't even know if there was an Australian team at that point. I said, I'll give myself 18 months, just because I had no direction in my life. I'd left the army. I'd viewed myself as a soldier, and now that wasn't going to happen. I needed to have a new identity. And my whole goal was that, when you set these hard goals, it doesn't matter if you finish it. But the point is that because it's hard, you have to address a lot of the faults that you see within yourself. So, like, when you have a real honest conversation with yourself, so, whether you honestly go, look, I feel like I'm lazy. I feel like I'm not, you know, I'm not where I want to be in life. and this is why I'm lazy, I'm not committed, so forth. When you set a hard goal and you really commit to it, you tell people about it, and you put a plan in place, you have a reason to change those things. And if it's obtainable, then what did you have to do to get it? For me, I ended up making the Australian team in 17 months and played in the World Cup. And I was a terrible player. Like, I just hadn't played long enough, but I was probably one of the worst on the team.
But you
But my
tried
goal
your
wasn't,
hardest.
yeah, yeah, the because I'd felt like a failure when I left the army, and so I just set this goal to create a new identity for myself, change how I viewed myself, and give myself a reason to get up in the morning and participate in life. And
If you don't mind me asking, what happened when you were in the army?
so I went to Afghanistan. So my job was to drive armored vehicles, and I drove the lead one. So the vehicles that get blown up, that was the vehicles I drove. And we were based in a small patrol base, just in the middle of nowhere, Afghanistan, near the Helmand border. And there was like 20 of us, and we were there for 6 months. And we're out on combat operations, and I started just getting these excruciating headaches. And they were later diagnosed as cluster headaches, which are, the for some reason the brain releases histamine, which is the pain chemical.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, they'd last for about 4 hours, and probably the most intense pain I've ever experienced. And I get them 4 times a day, every day. And at this point, I was on operations. So I was driving, I was lead call sign. So I was driving all day and not sleeping all night as well, and going through this. And it was about 6 weeks into this, having these headaches, that my platoon commander said, look, we got to send you back to base to get this checked out, because you're barely functioning as it is, and we need you to be on the ball. So I was like, yeah, that's fine. They dropped me off. There was no goodbyes said, because I was going to be back in a couple of days. And I got back to the main base, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. They said, look, we can't figure this out, but you can't do your job like this, because it's still going on. It's been 6 weeks now, and I said, we're going to have to send you home. And when I got to Afghanistan, my whole goal for my time in the army was to be a soldier. Your goal is to serve your country and go on operations, and that's why you do it. So I got there, and Afghanistan, like, the lifestyle wasn't great, but you're still doing this job. You've got this purpose. People are proud of you, and all that. But by this time, I kind of gotten over it, and they said, we're gonna have to send you home, and I was ecstatic. I can't wait to see my daughter, can't wait to see my partner. I was so happy to go home. And 3 days went by. I got on the plane, you know, walked on, was happy, and then just saw all the guys I was going back with. One guy was missing both his legs, another guy had 5 bullet wounds,
And yours was
and
internally, so you felt like it didn't
my
mean as much.
mine was a headache. Yeah, yeah. So that whole flight home, I felt like, man, you're a coward. All my friends, all my buddies are still over there getting shot at, living in the desert, dealing with scorpions and spiders, and I'm on a plane because of headaches. And especially because at that time they didn't know what it was. It was, just take some Panadol. Panadol's not working, or it's kind of this feeling that you know maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought.
Mm-hmm.
So I got home, and all my buddies are back overseas, so no one back in my unit knows who I am. So I kind of lost all that connection. And then when they came back, I still didn't really have that connection, because there's a thing called confirmation bias, where if you believe something, your brain will seek out the information that confirms that belief.
Yeah.
You know whatever thoughts you want to have. So I felt like I was a piece of shit. And so every interaction I had, I would seek out the information that drove that home and reinforce the fact that I thought that.
how hard was
So
it for you to overcome something like that? Like, how are you able to be motivationally speaking and doing all these things? Did you just realize like now you have something that diagnoses you as having some type of trauma, so you feel like it's out of your hands a little bit, or do you feel like it's
well,
still your fault?
I had to change my perspective on it. So my life wasn't going well. I was really, I got diagnosed with PTSD. I wasn't sure what it was until years later, and it was that flight. That flight, I feel like was a trauma. We got shot at, but it was nothing. You know, we had a pretty good trip compared to a lot of guys, and but I came home. My life wasn't how I wanted it to be. I wasn't participating in, my relationship that was falling apart, and I just had to have that honest conversation. For me, it's very hard for us to be honest with ourselves, and you know you always look for the easy way out. Oh, I'm not where I want to be because of this or because of that or because this person said this. And I had to sit down and go, well, what do I want to change? And for me it was, being lazy. I had no direction. I was leaving the army, so that wasn't going to happen anymore. Now I'm not a soldier. Now what's your career? Like, where do you want to be? And for me that was the starting point of just, well, I can't find a goal, so I'll just set one and then just see what develops out of that. And so setting that goal kind of got me up and motivated, and all right, I'm going to do this. Then I'm telling people around me, I'm going to make this team. They're all laughing at me. And I started just doing the opposite of what people thought I could. So no one thought I could do it. Everyone thought I was crazy. So I thought, that I'll use that as motivation. And that kind of gave me that purpose. And as that flowed on, I really started to embrace when I made the Australian team, I had to look back and realize people find it weird now that I say I'm ashamed of my service in Afghanistan. And they go, oh, you should be ashamed. And, what I say to them is I like viewing it that way, because the proudest part of my life is that this is how I felt coming back from Afghanistan. And this is what I did to address that. So I haven't changed how I view that. I changed how I took action against that.
Do you find it
And
weird that you try to go after something like gridiron, even though you were like you had cluster headaches?
yeah, well, I played a lot with them, but it wasn't until about a year after I left the army that I actually got diagnosed and actually got uh, the proper medication. So that started being addressed, as I had the incentive to. You know the you know the headaches were affecting my ability to go to the gym, to work out, to study, and do all that, and it really gave me that incentive to address these faults that I found within myself, because my thinking wasn't that, I'm going to make the Australian team in 18 months. My thinking was that's what I'm going to aim for. But if I don't get it, I'm going to get fitter. I'm going to make new friends, and I'm going to get better at something I haven't done. And, after the World Cup, we had 5 games and, came back. We played in Canton, at the stadium there. And I came back. I didn't actually miss playing in the World Cup. I actually missed training for it. I actually missed having that direction and that drive. And that's what I found is beneficial to people when they set goals. If you want to start a business, your goal shouldn't be to sell it for $200 million. Your goal should be to grow your business to this point. And through that process, you'll have to address all the things that would hold you back from selling it at $200 million, say.
Well,
But that hard goal is key.
That's the whole Jordan Belfort quote. Like, don't judge me by my winners, judge me by my losers because I have so few. If you develop that mindset, you're going to have a drive to make sure you don't have losses. You're going to be able to
Yeah.
try and pursue anything and realize, like, if you put in the effort to try and achieve what you want to achieve, even if you set an unrealistic goal, you're going to obtain it. If you got to have a drive for something.
It's one of those things too, and it's once you embrace, not being the best, once you embrace being the weakest person in the room, and say, I'm the weakest person in the room. A lot of the times you will actually not want to be that person, and then you'll set a goal to change those things that, confirm that belief. So for my mum started a business recently, and she said, oh, wanted your advice about what it's like. And I said, it'll be the worst year of your life. I said, it will just be horrible. It'll be horrifying, and every day is going to suck. And she's like, that's not as motivational as you may think.
If I telling her everything's gonna suck.
But I was like, that's what's so hard is that, out of everything I've done in life, starting a business is probably the hardest thing, because there's literally no one else you can blame for the success or failure of your business.
Yeah, the people shooting
And
at you aren't even as savage as the people that you're trying to
no,
get a business
and,
going.
and I mean that's the thing, in Afghanistan, I'm still paying my bills, I'm providing for my family, I've got a paycheck coming in. But in business, if I don't make sales, my mortgage doesn't get paid, and I'm the only one who can make sales. So it's that it's very rare in life that we can blame everything on us, and it's very intimidating. So that first year you're dealing with 200 no's, 200 rejections, and just buying people coffee, and they don't want to buy anything, and you've just wasted your money. But the benefit of that is that you stop caring about the no's. And as much as people say, like Gary V and all that will say, just stop caring, you can't understand it until you go through that process, until you become callous and kind of start to address, your self-esteem was sales. I have to learn how to sell. I have to learn how to network better. And after that first year, you're sweet, you're golden, because you've addressed those. And that's why it sucks, because the whole year is spent addressing everything bad about yourself in order to survive.
Would you say self-reflection has been your biggest motivator?
Mm, I would say my biggest motivator has been, to be honest, my view on myself as a person. I've always viewed
Yeah,
myself.
that's self-inflection.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, but I've always had a negative view of myself, and people, despite being a motivational speaker, I'm not a positive person. For me, I like to use negativity in a positive way. For I started playing football because I felt like I wasn't up to it. I had all these negative thoughts, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to use these negative thoughts on this goal. And for me, not being a positive person, in terms of my mindset, so on and so forth, I can't relate to anyone who is positive. I can use negativity in that positive way. And I think a lot more people probably have that negative thinking, especially nowadays with social media, etc. That once you figure out how to use it, you've kind of got that key. You've got that self motivation, because you want to address everything negative you feel about yourself.
Well, it's like putting gas in your car. Like you're putting $20 and you're filling it up. You're basically
Yeah,
looking into yourself, finding where you need to do work and focusing on it, which is going to only drive you to become a better person. The fact that I can't make justifications on anybody or any specifications on anybody's experiences or anything, any topic, without truly hearing it through somebody else's words and someone who's actually experienced it.
yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things when I think when you view people's life as a perspective rather than a persona, for me, I don't know about um, your guys' current political situation, but over here, you've got these prime ministers, essentially our presidents, that they don't have a good public opinion. And my thinking is always not so much the public opinion. I don't really watch the news or anything like that, but I'm always fascinated by someone who becomes a president or prime minister at some point, in like a year 6 or high school. I'm sure they said, I want to be president one day. And how many people would have told them no? And yet they're doing it. And for me, I like to use that as kind of my air of what I want to do with my life. You know, the playing football was essentially for my daughter to show her that, hey, I never grew up playing football and I was able to accomplish this. So you can't tell me you can't do anything in this world because I was able to do this.
Do you think once you
And
start setting limits or start setting on things you can't do, you start losing the battle of life?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, one of the things I've really found is that, so I did that with, football and et cetera, but you have to go through this learning process every single goal. Like you forget the process it took to get to that point. I remember when I'd left, I worked with gangs and at-risk youth for, a number of years and ran some programs doing that. And I kind of, I came back from working in Brazil and kind of, reached the pinnacle and wanted to change. And, so I wanted to, provide for my family better, community services and, working in the kind of not-for-profit sector will not help you provide for your family. You get paid far lower than anywhere else for the same job. So I had to go, I've spent a number of years there and now what's how am I going to provide for my family to get them out of, the middle class. I grew up in very low class and, we became middle class, and my goal is to become high class for my family. That's at least where I'm going to set it. And, I want my daughters to be able to choose if they want to work. That's just my goal as a parent. And so I'm applying for these like corporate jobs and, entry level, just an entry level consultant and so on and so forth. And I had like 300 job rejections. I could not get a job. And I'd run programs before, and you get in this mind state, and I forgot everything that I learned with playing football. I was like, no one's going to give me a job. I just can't get one. And, I had to sit down, I listened to a lot of motivational speakers when I get to that point. I had to sit down and go, okay, let's be honest again. Like we did when you first started playing football, why wouldn't you get a job? So, okay, well, I haven't got the qualifications to prove that I want to do that. So, ended up signing up to do an MBA and doing my MBA. And, that was the process, but it was amazing how long it took me to remember that I'd just forgotten everything. And I think it's that constant cycle where, as someone put it, once you do one thing, you feel like you can do a bigger thing, but the cycle remains the same. So you still have to go through that learning period, but the goal is just different.
Dude, I think
And
what you're doing out there is freaking inspiring, man. Like when I'm just hearing you talk and I'm thinking about everything, like my mind's already racing about things that just from coming back from Afghanistan, and not even how traumatic, like a lot of people are going to overlook that traumatic plane experience. Like you develop PTSD from that. You know how many people chalk up PTSD as something just from dealing with an explosion or a loss like that when they don't realize
yeah,
how
yeah,
fragile the brain truly is. I guarantee
yeah,
you, and like correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're sitting on this plane and you're seeing these people around you who you basically fought with, who basically you're kind of bonded with close to, and you see them basically not going to be able to live the same life when they get back. And then you're just chalking it up to having a headache, and you're seeing yourself as a kind of a lesser, a less of less importance, I would say. Um,
yeah,
and you're seeing all this, that impacts your brain, dude. That scars everything, man. That leaves a lasting imprint on not only your mind, your consciousness, but your soul, dude. You feel like you just gave up, even though like you felt like you didn't have anything, I guess, to give up for. Like you were just like, oh, I get
well,
to go home. It's like, no, but you had something going on inside of your mind that you could not explain, that you could only relate to a headache because there was no former diagnosis for it.
yeah, yeah. And it's one of those things where, for me, the trauma of it is the lack of control. The fact that I chose not to have control in that situation, or I perceive that. And you know, everyone I've met, I've worked with that have gone through trauma, everything that's really affected them is when they're not in control and they don't feel like they they have power in their situations. You know, for for a lot of life, like it feels like we're out of control. When I was going through the US and Brazil, I ended up studying. There's a phenomenon called addiction to trauma, and that's where through prolonged exposure to trauma, you can actually become addicted to it. And these are studies that are produced by you know qualified academics. The And I relate it to people like this. You know, one of the things when you're talking about control in life is that every guy I've talked to, all my friends that I went to Afghanistan with, I would say 99% of us want to go back. And it took me a long time to really figure out why that was. And I didn't figure it out until, I was living in South Chicago, for a while, and Cicero and Englewood and those kind of places. And, working with the gangs and stuff there. And, I came back from there and I wanted to go back to South Chicago and, the favelas in Brazil and stuff like that. To me, it's where when the guys want to go back to Afghanistan, it's because there's very rare points in your life where you have sole control and you feel like you're in the moment, mindfulness. And when you're on patrol in Afghanistan, you know, say I'm driving down a road, I'm not thinking about my mortgage or, what my kids are doing, the bills I got to pay. I'm thinking about, is there a bomb there? Where's my route? Where have I got to go? Is that someone with a gun up there? I'm in the moment.
I
And
think the
then,
most you have to ask from anybody that wants to even bother changing their life or feel like they don't know how to change their life is just changing your perspective.
yeah, and controlling your perspective,
Well,
you know,
you're able to, yeah, you're able to change it if you choose to control it. Like if you just let your life constantly beat you down and you think that you're never going to go anywhere, you think this is what life is, just making money, going to work, being miserable all day, you're not going to ever be truly happy. You're never ever going to have the drive to aspire to do what you want to do. You have to decide that, yeah, it might be stupid to somebody else, but it's smart to you. So you have to take every little step forward into pursuing it. So many people lose that, especially in the world today, like in my country. Like that's all it's around. People are just like, I'm comfortable. It's like, do you want to be comfortable or do you want to fucking live? Like, don't sit there and tell me that you don't have the time, you don't have the ability, you don't have the power to, when I can guarantee you, I can see a person that has no legs doing squats. Like what?
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
you picture these anomalies and you're like, why are you doing that? Like, you're not supposed to be doing that. You don't have legs. And he's like, what do you mean I'm not supposed to be doing that? This is what I want to
There
do.
was
I'm
a
going to do
blind,
it.
there was a blind guy who climbed Mount
Mount
Everest.
Everest. Yes, I
A
know. Isn't that
blind guy.
nuts? Isn't that
Well,
nuts?
I you know, I always wonder, what the summit was like for him. But that's just my personal thing. The yeah,
You know
he
what he
just did
said
it
to the
because
guy,
he
right? You know
could.
what he said to the guy? He was like, hey, I'm guessing we probably watched the same Joe Rogan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was like, the blind guy told him, was like, take a look around for me. Like, you hear that, your soul shatters. Like, you're like, like, oh my God, he just did all that and did not be able to see it. Like, the dude was talking, he was like, dude, I could have just took him up a quarter of the mountain and told him he was at the top of Mount Everest and he wouldn't have even known. But I took him all the way up because I realized I'd rather have in my heart knowing that he accomplished doing something like this and feeling like he accomplished something by truly doing it, not just lying or trying to uncover it because it would be easier. And
I mean,
hearing that, dude, there's got to be more people out there like that. That should be the norm.
it's one of those things, man, where the I went snowboarding with some friends, and we were talking about my when I came back from Afghanistan. I'd been through a whole bunch before Afghanistan growing up, but you know, I came back with this theory that, when I'm at my funeral, or when people are at my funeral, what are they going to say? He's a good father, he's a good friend. Then what? And for me, I thought, I'd always thought Afghanistan was the pinnacle, but okay, well, I can add in some more chapters to it. And that was, he went to Afghanistan, and then he played football for Australia, even though he'd never played before, and he you know did this fellowship, worked in Brazil, worked in the US, lived in favelas, and so on and so forth. And to me, I just wanted to extend out that legacy of the things that I had accomplished, not that were great to anyone, but where my daughter could look at that and take something from my life. And my friends had a different opinion. They had some friends that, you know, the father of these kids that they're, godparents to, he decided to row a boat from New Zealand to Australia, which is, that's a couple of thousand miles, in open ocean. Um, and he didn't survive. He didn't survive the trip. And their perspective on it was that was selfish. He doesn't get to see their kids grow up. And I can see that. But what I said to them is, my father's been alive my whole life, and I've seen him maybe 3 times, so he's had no effect on my life. But if I were his kids, I'd use that as, you know, there's always, there's always a reason not to do something, but you're never going to know what you can do until you do it. For me, those kids have a legacy to hold on to and an example to hold on to. It's not, you know, having their father there, but it's something that where they can say, "This is how I want to live my life, and this is something that's going to change my behavior."
Yeah, man. I think if you push a drive towards anything, you'll be able to accomplish everything at least.
Mm,
There's nothing you really can't stop doing, dude. You
yeah,
know, you just got to change your perspective on things. You got to be the optimist in life because if you start looking at the world as shit, which it is, if you look at the beautiful things that lie underneath the surface that are actually not that far down in the deep, you don't have to really dig that far. They're just covered up by layers of shit, man. You just got
yeah, yeah,
once you truly find that, you'll figure out life has a bit of meaning to it. Like it's not just work till you die. It's about doing what you want to
yeah.
do and not hurting others.
It's one of those things. It's like, when you start a business, like I grew up real poor, and I started a business, and I was so scared, and now my mortgage relies on that. And I'd made a few bad decisions, and took on some bad clients, and I was in a bad way. So I was feeling real overwhelmed and just like, oh, what's the point? But changing my perspective on it, I was like, well, if this business doesn't work out, what's my options? I can go work at, you know, the shopping center, at the Woolworths or the Kmart, go work at checkouts, or I can be a garbage man. Like, I'm never going to be out of a job now that I know how to get one. It's just setting my standards lower, and it's changing that perspective goes, okay, well, I've got a safety net. I'm not out in the open. I'm kind of clustered in with everyone else trying to get theirs. And that kind of gives you a bit more control over, you know, not feeling overwhelmed, and kind of, well, if this doesn't work out, I've got this and I've got this, and I can plan better. And changing it like that really changes your mindset about what you can do.
Well, you know what, Zach? It was amazing having you on this podcast, dude. I mean, you practically motivated me to keep this thing going and try my hardest to get where I need it to be. And hearing you go off about bears and then going off about sharks, like it was awesome. But at the same time, it was interesting to hear your perspective of the kind of the trauma you went through in your life and how you're able to overcome that. Because it seems like a lot of what makes up motivational speakers is their ability to try and tell people how to do things, but also they've
Yeah,
experienced the down. They know what it's like to be in the rough, and they know what it's like to feel like they don't have a way out. And you're able to relate to people and tell them, "Hey, I'm just like you. I've experienced trauma. Everybody does.
yeah,
It's adaptive for each person." And the reason why, like Bruce Lee has the best quote: God gave you this road because you're the only one that can walk it. Like the flaws and the problems in your life may be caused by somebody else, but they're your problems, and they're only going to form you into the person you choose to let it form you into.
I look at it like this, man. You know, we can't control what happens to us in life. We can only control how we react to it. And when you look at it like that, you have a lot more control over your life than you really realize.
Yeah, like I said, it's all about change of perspective, dude. And
Mm.
like I said, I really appreciate you coming and being able just to talk on my podcast. It was awesome. I want to give you a minute here just to be able to kind of shout out whatever page or things you want people to follow you on so they can kind of hear your message too.
Yeah. So, we've just released my site, zackbryers.com, zackbryers.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get on the other social media sites, but you know, I'll get there eventually. But that's the main one, is the website and LinkedIn. And I'll give a big shout out to a dude who was real critical in my life, Coach Jay on Facebook. He's a big motivational speaker. He works with a lot of prisoners and stuff, and he really helped me out, with changing my perspective when I was in my dark times. So I got to give him a shout out too.
And you know what, Zach, the fact that you're not doing a podcast on the fact that bears can kill you is a little bit crazy. And then also how kangaroos are just assholes in general. But it was awesome.
I'll start a podcast about that.
Let's do it. I'll be your first guest because I got some shit to talk about, some kangaroo jack problems that people think kangaroos are like teddy bears, that they're so fluffy and cuddly. No, they will jack you in a minute.
The truth about kangaroos. That's our name.
I call it the real the real kangaroo side.
Oh yeah.
Like
Real kangaroos.
Like Dark Side of the Moon, but freaking kangaroos. And no good
How
music.
to catch a kangaroo.
I don't even want to catch one. Freaking trap it, kill it, eat it.
You just want power over it. Just show them who's boss.
I would sign up a team of boxing kangaroos and just have them guard my house. So like instead of security guards, you would just roll up and a kangaroo would just be like, "You want to square up?"
I'm actually going to search YouTube for this, but I'm surprised. I want to see if there's actually a boxing match with a kangaroo and a human.
Oh, dude, you're gonna get so many video likes. You're gonna
surely something like a legit boxing match.
There's gonna be a legit box. Some guy did it. If there's chicken fights and dog fights, there's kangaroo fights.
Yeah, I mean, Will Ferrell fought a bear, and in semi-pro. So
yeah.
Surely there's
everybody run! The bear's missing.
Now you just got to add in the kangaroo, and jeez, fireworks.
The whole game changes. Well, Zach, it was awesome having you on, man, and I really hope to have you on again soon. It was awesome talking to you.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to come back on.